Hey, everybody. This is Nevin Gusak, your host. I know I'm looking a little sideways here. I have a very special guest here on the Politically Homeless podcast. We have Captain Joe McHugh, who is currently running for the Coral Springs City Commission down here in Broward County, Florida. Welcome to the program, Joe. How you doing? Or
Good.
should I call you Captain Joe? Or
No, Joe's perfect. Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. When I first came across your candidacy here in Coral Springs, Florida, I discovered that you're both pro-union and pro-business, that you are currently a captain in the Coral Springs Police Department, longtime resident. Could you elaborate a little bit about your professional background, where you're from originally, and then we'll go into some issues and policies.
Yes, I was born and raised in New Jersey. Tried very hard to become a law enforcement officer up there, but obviously in New Jersey it's a little different with civil service tests as well as a little bit of nepotism involved. Nobody in my family was involved in law enforcement, so my mother and father moved down to Coral Springs in 1994. I followed them shortly after and became a law enforcement officer for the Miami-Dade Police Department. Through my connections with Miami-Dade, I ended up meeting several officers here in Coral Springs, and I relocated here in '96 to Coral Springs Police Department. I was very fortunate. I raised up through the ranks here in Coral Springs, and like you said, I'm currently now a captain in charge of administration here in the police department. I owe everything to this city. They provided a phenomenal career for me and my family and my wife. So now that I'm getting ready to retire, I saw this opportunity to come up of City of Coral Springs Commission. I put a lot of feelers out there to local business owners, which I'm very close to, as well as citizens and employees of the city. And I got a lot of good responses from them. So I decided to take the next step and put my name in for City of Coral Springs Commission seat 5.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sounds like an excellent background. Sounds like you're eminently qualified to take the position. God willing, you'll be elected to the position, and hopefully, I'm sure you'll have a great career there, and you'll be serving us, the residents, very well. Now, being a Coral Springs police officer and rising to the ranks of captain, there's no doubt you have had a ton of interaction with our citizens, and now this campaign, you've been very, very open, very transparent. You're very friendly with the citizenry. You're very people-oriented. When you talk to the different residents, whether in the law enforcement capacity and especially running for office, what are the top concerns of the citizens here in Coral Springs issue-wise?
Issue-wise in Coral Springs, obviously, is the downtown Coral Springs area, the overdevelopment that's going on there. It was originally supposed to be high-end condos, and now it's switched to all rentals. Back when I began my law enforcement career here, it was called everything, the city to live, work, and raise a family. It used to be called the city in the country. Now our slogan is everything under the sun. And residents of this community do not want everything under the sun. They want to keep it to a family-oriented community. They want to create permanent residence here in Coral Springs. Obviously, if you have a permanent residence, you tend to care for it a little better than people that just have rental communities. I understand rental communities are also important, but there needs to be a balance between permanent residents and rental communities. Most of the citizens are very pleased with our police department, fire department, and our city alone when it comes to public works and our parks. I think it's very important to keep all those funded properly. We had a couple commissioners that were trying to cut our budget, specifically law enforcement. Thank God it didn't get cut. Obviously, school safety to me is very important. I was part of the Douglas High School during the shooting and when that occurred there. We were working that day. So for me, it's important that our schools remain safe, our teachers are properly trained. And when I say our teachers are properly trained, not just properly trained on how to secure a classroom, properly trained on how to identify if somebody's off for a day or somebody's off for a week. When I say somebody, a student, who's going to know what that student is better than a teacher who spends every Monday through Friday with that student? If something's just not right, they need to bring that to the attention of the school as well as the guidance counselors. Another big important thing for me here in the city, and I think the residents agree with it, and our mayor right now does a phenomenal job with it, is mental health. I saw some of our officers after Douglas go down the wrong route. And it's okay to say I got a problem. It's okay to say I need help. But we ought to also transpire that to the public. And what can we do by doing that? Let's create more programs for mental health. Let's create more programs that our veterans can be part of. Veterans that come back from war. I know they're struggling. They can say they're not, but police officers, firemen, military people, ego sometimes gets in the way, and it's okay to have an issue. It's okay to say, hey, you know what, Joe, give me a call. I'd like to talk to you for 20 minutes on the phone. I'm a phone call away.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned earlier about Stoneman Douglas. We know that the Coral Springs Police Department had performed heroically and very competently, and that's very, very well known and is appreciated by not only the citizens here in Coral Springs and Parkland, but also all over Broward County and the nation too as well. Now, you mentioned certain points about mental health, about law enforcement, about things like that nature. Now, and it made me think of this question. How would you work with Broward County government, the Broward Public Schools, the state government, and the federal government to secure a lot of these resources? Because you showed us that you're concerned about the housing issue, development issues, which obviously involves the county, state, and even federal regulations and laws. How would you work with agencies to make Coral Springs a family-friendly, safe, and prosperous community?
One of the most important things right now is I got the endorsement of the Broward Teachers Union, Anna Fusco. I have a very good relationship with her. I would want to continue to communicate with her and say, hey, what can I do as a commissioner in Coral Springs, not in the county, but in Coral Springs, to get the teachers what they need in their schools to make sure their schools are safe. Another important thing is, and we do it here in Coral Springs, we train with outside agencies, because as you can see, Stoneman Douglas, 2 different agencies work in 2 different ways. That can't happen again. The most important thing is that we all work together. We all know what each other's going to do, and we put aside, I'm a Coral Springs cop, you're a Margate cop, you're a Coconut Creek cop, you're a Broward Sheriff's Office. Who cares? We're all there for one purpose and one reason, is to work together to complete that goal of making sure we save as many lives as we can. When it comes to federal governments, I have a really good relationship with Dan Daly up in Tallahassee. He's a phone call away from me. I have so many contacts throughout the county where I can get whatever we need here for training. Federal funding, I'm not sure how the federal funding would work right now. That's something I would love to learn about, the federal funding. Obviously, there's so many grants that you can apply for that can get us stuff throughout the city. And I forgot the rest of the question. I apologize.
No, that's all. You answered it plenty about the using and working with state, local, and federal agencies outside of Coral Springs to make Coral Springs a safer and more prosperous community, and addressing the housing issue. And one of the things I have to appreciate about you is if somebody is not sure of a particular subject, and we can't know everything all the time, every time, you will admit it. And that you possess, in that sense, just as a personal observation, a sense of humility and honesty. And where public confidence in our elected officials is all-time low when you take a look at Congress's ratings. For example, it's like 20 some odd percent, a little over 20%. The details you're going into and combining that with honest feedback and answers is very refreshing. It's one of the many reasons why I wanted to have you on this show, and hopefully on future shows too as well. Do you have any other concerns that you wanted to bring up before we wrap up the show? Anything else you wanted to say?
No, I'd like to elaborate a little further on the point that you just brought up. And that's one thing I'm not afraid to admit to. I don't know everything about politics. I don't. But I got to tell you, I will give 100% to learn everything about it. Obviously, nobody in my family. I have a lawyer, I have a nurse, and I have a CEO as part of my family. Nobody's involved in politics. When I first told my family that I was extremely interested in this, their responses were, "What are you, crazy? You want to get involved in that?" But it was such a simple response from because after spending 28 years here in the law enforcement community in Coral Springs, I feel like just retiring, I'm giving up on everything that I've done for 20 years, all the relationships I've built, all the, I'm involved in youth sports in the city. I want to see our youth sports continue to grow in this community. You say, you talk about another concern of mine is affordable housing, workforce housing. I'll give you a prime example. When I have an officer that works for me that lives in Royal Palm Beach, he gets to take his police car home. Me as a taxpayer in this city, what is it benefiting me that Coral Springs police car is sitting in a driveway in Royal Palm Beach? If he can afford to live here in Coral Springs, it's a known fact, visibility deters crime. If we can get more officers, more teachers, more city employees to reside here in the city, it'd be extremely beneficial to the city, without a doubt. In regards to, affordable housing, the Live Local Act's a great act. Take advantage of it, get the assistance from the government to make it more. Let's work with developers. Obviously, the longer it takes to develop a piece of property in this city, the more money that comes out of developers' pocket. Let's work with developers. Let's expedite some permitting for them. Hey, we'll expedite permits, but you got to give us some affordable housing, some workforce housing in your community. Our teachers are extremely underpaid, very underpaid. And, I witness it every day, the way some of these kids act when they leave that school. These teachers need to be paid for the job they do. And I would love to see us, like residents that are born and raised here, go away to college. How can we figure it out to get them to come back and live in this community? It's a challenge, but you know what? If I can work with, the government, the Live Local Act, with the other commissioners, work as a team, maybe we can accomplish that goal.
And then it would be reestablishing Coral Springs once again as a fully family-centered community. Now, concerning Coral Springs, I know we've expressed some concerns at the direction Coral Springs is headed. What do you think are Coral Springs' current strengths as a community?
You know what I'm going to say. Obviously, public safety is a great strength we have. Our approval rating is always 95 to 98% here in the city. We have very good directors that work in the city. Our city manager is a very focused individual. He cares a lot about the city. We actually started on almost the same day, but he was a fireman and I was a police officer. We actually saved, myself and Frank Babnett gave CPR to a 1-year-old that fell in the canal. We actually revived the individual. So we got a bond. I think a good strength of mine is my relationship with the department directors here. I can call any one of them up at any time. Hey, I got this issue, what can we do about this? I think that's a great thing. Another thing is our parks. Our parks are premier parks. Like I can call Rob Hunter tomorrow and say, Rob, this weekend, anything going on in the parks? Oh, Joe, we got this, and this. Our parks are always packed. They're always packed. I mean, listen, we got the home of the Florida Panthers right down the street here. I mean, we got a very popular city here in Coral Springs, and it's developing too fast. And back when I was a police officer on Midnights, our big call on Midnights was the cow on Westview Drive.
I remember when there were cows there. I came to Coral Springs in 1997, so I remember that there were still some pockets of rural landscapes and the cows. I remember that. And yeah, definitely really some good answers. Now, concerning the infrastructure, now obviously the community center, the aquatic center, the theater that's located off of Coral Springs Drive, there's all that infrastructure continues to be a strength. Of course, we've noticed infrastructure improvements still occurring on Wiles Road and whatnot. So you have that going on. Do you see any other need for infrastructure improvements in Coral Springs with the roads, with other public facilities perhaps? Or what would you do as commissioner, if anything?
I'd tell you one of my first goals would be to relocate the charter school. Because once all developments occurring are going to be finished down there, that is not a safe place for the charter school to be. I would love to see the charter school be relocated either next to the police department or out the Sportsplex Drive somewhere. I know there is talk right now of the charter school being relocated to the police department and the gymnasium being relocated out to Sportsplex Drive, which I think is a phenomenal idea. Who wouldn't want to send their kid to a charter school located by the police department and fire department? Talk about the safety of your child. It's right there for you. In regards to the construction going on the roadway, I get it. I get you have to improve the roadways, but I just feel at this point we're doing too much at one time. Getting up and down University, Wiles Road, it takes forever right now. Like, I think we should have just slowed that down a little bit and did sections at a time, which I get they're doing sections at a time, but they're too large of sections right now. I know officers complain all the time, running, lights and siren going up University Drive. It's almost impossible to get through the traffic. So that's some things we have to think of, the safety of our community versus, making the infrastructure look more pretty, or repairing things.
Now, what is your opinion concerning increases in the budget in certain agencies? Do you feel there needs to be increases in budgets as the city gets larger and larger population numbers? Like, for example, you're going to need, obviously, in my opinion, more police officers as you get more and more people moving to Coral Springs. You're going to need potentially more firefighters because you have more houses and more businesses to potentially, God forbid, put fires out. Where do you stand on the expansion in the number of police officers, firefighters, city agencies, things of that nature? Is there a need for that? Could you elaborate on your opinions on that?
Yeah,
please?
for sure. I believe there totally is a need. As the city grows, you're gonna have to keep up with the growth of the city, 100%. Currently right now we're policing at around 230 sworn police officers in the city for about 135,000 residents.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very low rate that we're doing right now, but we're doing a good job at it. But as the city grows, you're gonna have to get more public works people. You're gonna have to get more, the parks. Right now our parks are okay. The parks guys do a great job. They're on top of it. But in regards to fire and police, as we get larger and the calls for service get up, obviously you'll have to judge it as you see the call volume start going up, because you don't want a response time as a police officer or fireman to be 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. You just don't want it. You want to be under 4 to 5 minutes for a response time. But if you see the call volume starting to increase, then you got to start realizing, hey, you know what? We got to start looking at this closer. We have to start pulling stats on this and see what the response time is per the population here. But no, I'm all for increasing public safety 100%.
So am I. There's an importance because I see on the various community groups, as you do, for example, there is an increase in the number of accidents and traffic issues. There is, a certain level of increase of crime. Although I would personally consider the city relatively safe, but there's always going to be need for more public safety, in my opinion, fire, public works. I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, and honestly, if I could increase our traffic unit by another 10 guys, the traffic in the city, you sit at a traffic light sometimes and you see somebody blow the red light by 2 or 3 seconds, and we get a lot of good responses from the community in regards to our aggressive driving people that are out there in unmarked cars, because they get to see the people's erratic driving all the time. If we can increase our aggressive driving unit and keep the community even safer on the streets as well inside the communities, it's a plus for everybody.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned also that you are very pro-union. I also know that you're entrepreneurial. You favored, obviously, the development of an expansion of private businesses. You even indicated about working with developers and expediting permits when needed to, which I definitely agree with and appreciate that. Why are you pro-union? Do you have any personal history with unions you want to share? What do you see in Florida and the greater United States, and here even perhaps in Coral Springs, where I saw even in the AT&T building there were strikers, and I gave honk my horn in support. Yeah. I got to tell you, this channel is pro-union. So what is your take on unions? Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I went through it myself. I was not part of a union when I worked for the Borough of Sayreville Garbage Department. The borough came in, they laid us all off, and they privatized it. If we had a union at that time, they wouldn't have been able to do that. I've sat through several contracts in my time as a law enforcement officer. The unions are there to help you get fair and equal justice to what is due to you in your current position. Mm-hmm. And I've witnessed it, and I'm very grateful for the Fraternal Order Police as our union. They've gotten us some very good contracts, and they go to battle for us. Not only is it pro-union when it comes to your contract, But there's several other things that's a benefit of the union. The union builds camaraderie in our department. Our union puts on a phenomenal picnic. Families come to the picnic. They do a lot of events for us. You feel part of a family when you're part of a union. Like I said, I did get a lot of support from you. I got the fire, I got the PBA, I got the FOP, I got the Broward Teachers Union, I got the ADL from Andy Mattis. I am a very pro-union guy, and I will continue to support our unions throughout my time, 100%.
Yeah, no, and that's excellent because also unions also help stimulate business. The more people, I'm more of a demand side economics kind of guy. So I believe the more that average people have money in their pockets, it's the key is to potentially having seed money for investments, for social mobility for average people. It also allows more people to spend more money on goods and services, which stimulates business and profits and whatnot. So it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
And that type of model of economics, and I've talked about this on the show before, we used to believe in that as mainstream thought. And unfortunately, that thought process that you and I share has been largely frittered away and is no longer mainstream. But it's starting to make slowly but surely a comeback, but it's taking time.
Yes.
Now, some people will say, oh, okay, you're pro-union. That means you don't like business, you don't like capitalism, that you hate the rich and you want to soak the rich. And you might get some people who are, more into union that might question you on that. Well, hey, you support unions, especially in the public sector, like the teachers union, for example. How would you respond to that? What is your stance on business and private business and private profit and things that are associated with free enterprise? What are your thoughts?
No, I support private business 150%. I know several business owners here throughout the city that own small businesses that I support them beyond belief. I'll tell you, a lot of the shopping I do, if it's jewelry, if it's anything small, I go to a privately owned business. I do, because I want to support the small business owners here in the community. Especially after the COVID hit, they're not making the money they used to make. Obviously everything's gone up, so people aren't spending it, the way they were. It's a two-way street. Yes, I support the union, and yes, I support small business. I do 100%.
Yeah, they don't have to be adversarial necessarily, and I think that's important. And I think I see you as a leader who can really bring back that form of politics that just because you're pro-union doesn't make you anti-business. Both can work together. And a lot of the old school Democrats and old school Republicans used to really talk about that. Back in the time that you and I were very young, I don't know how old you are, I'm 50 years old, I just turned 50, so born in 1974. Back when our parents were younger, you had that climate, which was very pro-union, but also still very pro-business. Businesses were rooted in the community, whether they were large companies or medium or small-sized companies. And that's one of the things I appreciated about your wide range of endorsers. You had public and private sector unions, as well as a lot of businesses, including ones that are known to be owned by political conservatives. And I appreciate that you kind of have this big tent that you can kind of unite good people of goodwill and good faith in the community, established institutions together into really a good campaign. Did you have anything before we go? Do you have anything to add? Any concerns you want to bring to the table on the show?
No, but as I said, one of the main reasons that my goal is to get elected for City of Coral Springs Commission is to work with individuals and be open-minded, open communication, be available all the time for the smallest little things possible. I've spoke to several residents throughout the community who's told me they've sent emails to certain commissioners or even to the mayor, and it takes 2 or 3 days to get back. Obviously, me being retired, if I get elected, that's one thing I will make sure I do all the time is be very quick on my response, because nobody wants to wait 2 or 3 days to get a response. Whether it's just a simple response of, hey, I got your email, I'm looking into it, give me a couple of days. But I think the biggest thing is to be open-minded and have open communication with the public. If you go out at the restaurant, somebody wants to talk to you, you're an elected official. You got to sit down and spend some time. It's just the way it goes. But I'm looking forward to the challenge. And like I previously said in your show, I don't know everything, and I will admit that I don't know everything. There's several times in my life, even as a supervisor at work, where I was wrong. And I'll tell you the first thing I will tell you, you know what, I'm wrong, you're right. Let's work on it together. And I think that's important. I think it's important to admit your faults and correct them and learn from them and move forward.
Absolutely. I personally endorse you in your
you.
endeavor. I will vote for you.
Thank you.
I hope to have you on the show in the future, whether you're a commissioner or not.
Absolutely.
But you really have a great package, a great platform. It's very encouraging to see more and more citizen candidates coming to the fore with really independent-minded political and economic platforms, and really just preaching a sense of harmony of all citizens, in this case, of Coral Springs of Goodwill. I want to thank you, Captain McHugh, or Captain Joe, I guess we'll call you, or Joe. I want to thank you for coming on the show. We'd love to have you back, particularly before the election, for maybe a follow-up interview and conversation. And now I'm going to appear on the screen. I'm coming back from the sidelines. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for the couple of listeners who are listening live. I really appreciate that. After the program is done and after this is properly uploaded, I'm going to include information on Captain Joe's campaign, as well as potentially where you can donate to his campaign. Those of you who like this video, be sure to click thumbs up. If you didn't like it, if you want to do thumbs down, totally your option, or just feel free to leave feedback on the YouTube comments page. Thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. God bless. Stay safe. God bless America. Enjoy the rest of your week and be good to each other. Thank you all. Okay, so I think